Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Chelsea. I'm a brand and web designer and owner of Kalon Design Studio. You may have seen my last video on brand consistency and how you can achieve it through brand guidelines. If you haven't watched it yet, go check it out or add it to your queue. Today, I want to dive deeper into your brand guide. In this video, we will talk about why you should have one, what you should include in it, and actionable steps to be able to create your own. Plus, a bonus step at the end if you really want to elevate your brand guide. So get comfortable and let's get started. A brand guide is everything about your brand perfectly packaged into a document for easy reference. It holds all the information that anyone would need to know in executing your brand style. This is important to have because it helps keep consistency in every aspect of your brand, even as your team grows or you outsource to a new creative. This document will serve as a visual and written roadmap for anyone who needs it, and it's a great resource for you and your team to have when doing anything related to your brand. It's important to remember as you're building it out that this entire document is an embodiment of your brand, as well as the items that are inside. So get creative with the layout and the wording and make sure it feels like your brand from start to finish. Now, let's get into the different things you want to include in your brand guide. The first thing you want to add in your brand guide is a little bit about your business. This will include your mission statement, your vision statement, your brand values, and if you'd like to include a bit of your brand's backstory, you can do that as well. These items are just as important as the visual elements of your brand because they help you connect emotionally with your audience. And by including them in your brand guide, you are giving even more insight into what makes your brand different, as well as an inside look at your brand's voice and goals. If you haven't crafted these yet, here are a few prompts to get you started. For your mission statement, you want to describe the ultimate purpose and impact of your brand. Imagine your brand's success in the distant future. What do you see? Some questions that can help you spark ideas for your mission statement are: what problems does your brand aim to solve? Who does it serve and how does it benefit them? What positive change do you want to bring about? How do you want your brand to be remembered? For your vision statement, you want to think about the world or industry with your brand's influence fully realized. Picture your brand's ideal state 5, 10, or 20 years from now. Some questions to help you curate your brand's vision are: what kind of future are you striving to create? How will your brand lead the way? What impact will your brand have on the world? How does your brand evolve and grow over time? For your brand's values, you want to define the core principles and beliefs that guide your brand's actions and decisions. Reflect on the qualities and characteristics you want your brand to be known for. Some questions to help get your wheels turning are: what ethical standards does your brand uphold? What values are non-negotiable for yourself and or your team? How do your values align with your mission and vision? What traits define your brand's culture and identity? Finally, when sharing your brand's backstory, be sure to include the story of how your brand came into existence. Introduce those who have influenced you along the way, and consider any unique attributes that set you apart from others in your industry. Think of questions like: what inspired you to start your business? How have your personal experiences shaped your brand's identity and purpose? Do you have any interesting stories, achievements, or milestones that you can share with your audience? Now that you have your mission, vision, and values, go ahead and add it to the first couple pages of your brand guide. Next, we want to include all your logos as well as usage guidelines on how to and how to not use each of them. Your brand should have at least 3 logo variations. A primary logo, which is the logo that you use majority of the time. Your secondary logo, which is often the opposite orientation of your primary logo. So if your primary logo takes up more room vertically, your secondary logo will most likely take up more room horizontally, and vice versa. This allows you more versatility when you're using your logo across different layouts. Finally, you want to have a submark. A submark is a small element usually taken from your primary logo and is used in places where your other logos just don't fit, or when you want a more subtle way to showcase your brand. Oftentimes this can be your logo mark. Think Nike swoosh. Or it can be a configuration of letters taken from your business name like Louis Vuitton. Now add your logos to your brand guide as well as usage guidelines. This includes color options, spacing, sizing, and incorrect usage. If you're in this stage in your branding, you should already have your color palettes established. If you don't and need some inspiration, check out the site coolors.com where you can generate different color palettes until you find the perfect colors for your brand. I'll go ahead and leave their URL in the description box if you want to check them out. Before picking your colors, it's best to do a little industry research and learn about color theory to see what colors will align best with your target audience. Every brand has a primary color palette. This is the color palette that is used majority of the time across your brand. Some brands have a secondary color palette as well, which is a set of colors that is meant to be used sparingly across your brand. They are great to use for pops of color, added elements, or to draw extra attention to certain things in your designs. Remember, the goal for your brand is consistency, so don't overload your palettes with a ton of colors. Normally, I aim to have about 5 colors in the primary color palettes that I create for my clients. I always have a dark color to use for things like text, a lighter color to use for things like backgrounds, and a couple colorful options to add a little more brand personality. When adding your colors to your brand guide, be sure to include a unique name. A hex code, a 6-digit code that can be used to populate the exact color, RGB values which will be used for digital designs, CMYK values which will be used for print designs. You can also include tints of your colors to allow for more variety in your palette. Now that you know what to include, go ahead and add your color palettes to your brand guide. Now it's time to include your typography. Just like everything else up to this point, having a set of fonts is super important to maintaining brand consistency. You want to have typography that you can use on every design within your brand. Fonts have a strong ability to convey emotions in your audience, so keep that in mind when you're choosing yours. Your font selection should include a heading font, a subheading font, and a paragraph font. When you add your fonts to your brand guide, be sure to add the name of the font, whether it's a heading, a subheading, or a paragraph font, and key attributes that you want to maintain as you use them. For example, if you want your subheading font to always be formatted as uppercase, make a note of that in your brand guide. If you already have your fonts selected, go ahead and add them to your document. Now for a couple final touches. These items aren't always necessary for your brand, but they are super beneficial to have to fine-tune your brand style even further and to allow for as much creativity as possible. Adding icons, elements, and patterns are great assets to have when executing your brand style across different designs. They can be used in many different ways, and if you've worked with a designer, hopefully they've helped you create a set of custom assets that really speak to your brand style, as well as create a more unique experience for your target clients or customers. When you include these items in your brand guide, be sure you're adding usage guidelines for when and how you want these elements to be utilized in your branding. In the next page or two, you want to have some imagery that has a clear style and aligns with your brand. This is really helpful as a reference for anyone that uses stock images or if you're planning a brand shoot in the future. You can add the images by themselves, or you can include a description of the style of photography or imagery you want to utilize in your brand. It's not only important to think about how the images are going to align with your brand style, but you also want to think about how they're going to align with your target audience. Now go do a quick Pinterest search and find images that align perfectly with your brand to add to your brand guide. You've made it to the end, and now you have a brand guide that is the perfect reference for you or anyone else to use whenever they're doing any sort of design for your brand. As promised, here is a bonus edition that will really elevate your brand guide. There is one thing that I like to include for all my clients when I create their brand guide, and that is showing the brand in action using mockups. I use Envato Elements to source mockup templates that are relevant for the industry, and I create a couple mockups that include everything we just touched on to really show how this brand looks in the real world. If you want to learn more about Envato Elements, I'll leave their URL in the description below. This is such a nice touch to add to your brand guide so that you or anyone else that is learning about your brand's visual identity can see how your brand is represented on real examples. Now you have a brand guide that showcases every aspect of your brand style. You can use this guide as a reference for any project moving forward. Your next step is to get your beautiful brand in front of more people. And what better way to do that than with a website? I've got a great video coming up that'll give you 10 design and marketing characteristics of a good website, so stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button. If you want to subscribe to my channel and be notified when my next video is live, hit the subscribe button and the little bell right next to it.